Hey guys, Paul Reddick here. Welcome back to another edition of the Baseball Dads podcast. And in this episode, we're going to talk about a kind of a crossroads that a lot of dads are finding themselves in. And the age is starting to get a little younger and younger and younger. In fact, just this week, it's only Wednesday, just this week, I had 3 calls from dads basically asking what do they do with their 8-year-old? Certainly a discussion and an issue that our fathers never had to face. And dads can find themselves at a crossroads. Do you keep your 8-year-old son in rec ball, where there are certainly some issues, or do you move him into travel ball? And there's certainly pressure moving in that direction. So we're going to tackle that question in this episode of the Baseball Dads podcast. Before we do, head on over to Baseball Dads Show. And I realize I just said Baseball Dads podcast, but we changed it. It's Baseball Dads Show. So go to baseballdadsshow.com. There's a bunch of stuff over there. So number 1 is a scorecard where you can see, can your son play at the next level? Does he have, what it takes to move up? Should he play up in age brackets? And does he have that potential, to play at college or professional level? Also, a word-for-word email dialogue that you can use to ask your son's coach for more playing time without looking like one of those dads. Also, too, so awesome, please join our Facebook group. We have a brand new Baseball Dads Facebook group. We've only had it for about a week, and there's already 1,200 members of that group, and the conversations and everything is incredible. You can link to that at baseballdadsshow.com. And then also there, if you want to talk to me about anything, there's a link there where you can set up a call, to talk to me. You guys send in a lot of great questions. You ask questions. Sometimes it's easier for me to talk to you on the phone for 5-10 minutes, answer your question completely than it is to kind of go back and forth on email. So all of that is over at baseballdadsshow.com, but please join that Facebook group. It is absolutely awesome stuff. The average question from a dad is getting about 33 comments. There's a lot of experience to be shared there, especially from the fathers who their kids are older, 16, 17. There's even some fathers in there that their kids are out of baseball, and they're but they're still involved as a coach. And just the advice and the experience and the wisdom that you can get from the fellow fathers that have maybe been down the road that you are going is just invaluable. So go to baseballdadsshow.com and you can link to that Facebook group and join it there. So let's get into this topic. So what do I do with my 8-year-old? What do I do with my 9-year-old, my 7-year-old? Do I put him into travel ball or do I put him into rec ball? So again, you guys know by now, I'm a little Pollyannish on this, right? Like I wish it were rec ball, but I also live in the real world, and I know that there are drawbacks in rec ball, right? That I get it. The leagues are kind of falling apart. The competition is not great. The organization is not there. I do get it. So my advice to you, in a perfect world, I would love for more people to stay into local rec ball because I think it's important, or to local Little League ball. And maybe you're the one to really bolster that league. Somebody kind of has to take that stand to stay and say, we're not going to go. And that might create a vacuum in the other way. So we'll just put that. I don't want to go through what I would recommend without acknowledging that there are some problems there. I get it. It's changing. So the issue that most dads face is that they feel like they're not in control, that they feel like that if I put my kid in this, does he get swept up in that? And does that become like now, and really what their dads are feeling is, am I going to lose control over this situation? Am I going to put my son into this travel ball thing, and we think it's going to be a few months per year, and then the next thing you know, it becomes this year-round program, and now we have created kind of a monster that we cannot control anymore. And so I often tell dads this, that a travel ball is a lot like a lion cub. And, a lion cub is very sweet and nice. And you can even pet a lion cub, and you can play with a lion cub if you've ever been there's certain places where you can do that kind of stuff. But you can't have a lion cub as a pet, because a lion cub tends to grow into a lion. And then lions do lion stuff. Right? So I want you just to keep that in mind, but it's not the perfect analogy, but it is something to really be aware of. And so what I would say to you is that it's not twofold. It's not as crucial as you think for your kid to play 8-year-old, 9-year-old travel baseball. It's not as crucial as you think. If he spends another year in rec ball and maybe the competition isn't great, fine. Fine. There's no major leaguer today that's saying, thank goodness I played 8-year-old travel ball. Because if I didn't play on my 8-year-old travel ball team, I don't know that I'd be in the major leagues. And there's nobody saying, and there's no guy, who didn't make the major leagues and looking back saying, it was because I didn't play on that 8-year-old travel team, and that's why I didn't make it, right? So it's not as crucial as you think, right? It really isn't. The most important part is that you keep him in love with the game and you keep that passion high. We're going to talk about later on about what to do when your kid just has that kind of uncontrollable passion, which we hear a lot of. The other thing I would say is that you're more in control than you think. Okay, you're much more in control than you think. Look, these travel ball teams, and I don't think everyone in it is. Obviously, I think there's a lot more good people than bad people, but there are some bad people, and there are some good people that get caught up into stuff, bad, ways of thinking and bad actions, and they get swept up in it too. And they're really good at making you feel that if you don't do this, you're somehow delaying your kid's progress, and somehow you're going to hold him back, and somehow he is going to miss out. All of those things, when they are said to a father, translate into this: if you care about your kid, you're going to do this. And these guys know that, and I'm telling you, they're really, really good at pushing those buttons that would make a father think that way. But you are in much more control than you think, and I would also ask you to be open to the suggestion that if somebody is putting undue pressure on you to do something, I would really examine how much is in it for them. And here's a really interesting thing that I've always it's always fascinated me, but you might say, what's really in it for the coach of the 8-year-old travel team to have my son on the team? And I think normal logical thinking people do that. But you know what? The problem is, again, I get this 30,000 view. I see the 18-year-old that played on the 8-year-old travel team now. I see what he looks like now. I see the father that becomes a maniac and then calls me up and realizes that, he screwed everything up. He lost control. And I see the kid who gets thrown up into 8-year-old baseball, gets an otherwise good man as a coach, but feels the pressure of having to win and to succeed because now people are paying money to play on the team, and it's not like a little league type thing. So there's that kind of pressure. There's also the investment of time and travel. So all of those things can take an otherwise good man, a good, well-intentioned coach, and I have seen that stuff turn a Jekyll and Hyde thing, where a good man can feel the pressure of all this travel stuff, and all of a sudden the 8-year-old team becomes like a thing he's got to succeed at. And so I would, you might say, well, what's in it for that guy? I'm going to tell you, it's a weird thing. It's weird to watch grown men turn into this, but the pressures, whether we think they're silly or not, are real. And I have seen good men do really bad things and get swept up into bad situations and make some bad decisions. And part of that is the pressure they put on kids to play on teams, especially when there's pressure on them to win. And in some ways, create a return on investment for the parents that have paid money for this team. So you are in more control than you think. Here's where it starts, Dad. Since we started this podcast, I have constantly encouraged you guys to set values for your family, to have values that are discussed, agreed upon, posted visually, and reviewed. The reason why this is important is because this now is not, you don't want to be in a position where your kid's like, Dad, I want to do it. The offer that your son gets for an 8-year-old team or a 9-year-old team, whatever it is, it has to flow through the values of your family. So every decision flows through the values of your family. If you don't have the values, then that's when you're stuck making an emotional, reactive decision, and that's where dads get tripped up in this thing. So if you have your values and your values are clear, the strength of your values is going to be is going to influence the strength of your answer to these 8-year-old teams. So now, assuming you have that or you're going to do that, what answer do you give? Well, it's simple. You can say yes to a travel ball team. I think that there are phenomenal travel ball teams out there, great ones. They don't make the news, But the other stuff that doesn't make the news too is like the failures that come out of it, like all the stuff we talked about before, the 18-year-old who now hates baseball, or the father who loses his mind. None of that stuff really gets posted on Facebook. But you have the power. And so if you do say yes, from the strength of your values, you can make a decision that you set the parameters. So if you say, my son will play for your team and he'll play from March through June, whatever it is, that's it. Those are the parameters. That's what you set. That's what you agree upon. And they're final. They're final. You can't go back on them. Okay, because this is not about baseball now. Okay, this is about your family values and you sticking to your guns and setting healthy parameters for your son. So if you say 4 months and it turns into, and the coach asks you to play 2 more and you go 6 months, you say, well, what's 2 months more of baseball? I don't see it that way. I see it that you set a parameter and then someone talked you out of it, and now your son is going to see that you can be pushed around. So what's more important? Your son seeing that we make a decision and it's final, and then we're going to, that's it. You can't be influenced one way or the other, so that dad can't be, manipulated. Now, this also goes into what's a healthy dose. Look, I know kids aren't going to play 3 months of baseball per year. So I think if you're going to play in 2 seasons, I think that's fine. So if you're going to play like spring and summer, or summer and fall, or spring and fall, great, do it. I think you should do that. But here is a way to combat it becoming more than becoming more than you want and you losing control of it. So the way is that you have your kids in a lot of other activities. So if your kid is going to play in the spring and the summer, he should have a fall activity that he's committed to. So when the travel ball coach comes and say, hey, we need you for the fall, is that, you know what, he's in soccer. Can he quit soccer? Nope, he can't, because on our values list that's on our refrigerator, it says that we make a commitment, we keep a commitment. And we've made a commitment to soccer. So, Coach, we appreciate the offer, but in our house, we make commitments and we keep commitments. And right now, our commitment's to soccer, and our commitment to you was exactly what we said, spring and the summer, and we're grateful for the opportunity you gave him, but we already have a commitment for soccer. Now, that gives you a lot of opportunities. Number one, it kind of pulls you out from being kind of the bad guy a little bit. It keeps your son into other activities. We're going to talk about that in a second, which are super, super important. And now it's an opportunity for you, if you do feel like it's getting out of control, it's an opportunity for you to show your son that the values are important. And I would absolutely risk your son being mad at you for a week against demonstrating the value. I would make that trade, that we demonstrate the value. He'll be mad at you for a week. He'll get over it. Now, when we talk about other sports, and I think the key to this is that your son should be doing a lot of other activities, and other sports are great, but karate, swimming, whatever else they're going to do. And here's why. I had a high school coach, he wasn't my high school coach, I was his assistant coach. It was a high school program at Elizabeth High School, and his name was Ray Korn. And Ray almost insisted that his players do something else during the season. I've talked about this in other podcasts and emails, but it's worth repeating here. And Ray said to me, he goes, we want to compete for a county championship and a state championship. And these guys in game, or in the 7th inning of the championship game, what the skills and the confidence and the focus and all those things they're going to need to perform then, they're not going to learn sitting in a batting cage in the winter. But if they're on the swim team or the track team or the basketball team or even the chess team, they're out there competing and they're exercising their competing muscles. And even though it's not specific to baseball, it still flows. It's still a competitor is a competitor. And Ray rather had his athletes out there competing in other seasons than just sitting in a batting cage working on their baseball. And we've seen the stats on like the draft and other sports and stuff like that. Like you could look those up, like how many players in the draft played multiple sports in high school. So just look that up. Now, a retort I get from dads is, but my son has passion. All he wants to do is baseball. What do I do with that passion? Well, let me tell you this. If your son does have that passion for baseball and he does love baseball, I'll tell you the worst thing you can do is put too much structure around that passion. If you put too much structure around that passion, then that passion, we always talk about the restriction of freedom. And then again, now that passion becomes, that can easily turn into a job or something that he feels he has to do. Right? And that we've done other podcasts on where that can go. So, but if he does have that passion, it's up to you to set some parameters around that passion. So when a dad says, all my son wants to do is play baseball. And I said, great. You know what? All my sons want to do is eat Swedish fish, ice cream, and cupcakes and M&Ms. And if we didn't intervene and make them eat a variety of healthy foods and a small portion of some candy and sweets and stuff like that, I would have kids of poor health. The same thing happens in baseball. If you do not set the parameters of what is structured baseball, you're going to get a kid who's going to burn out on it. So the worst thing you could do with his passion is put too much structure around it. It's almost like if Mozart, his family, put him in piano lessons, or Picasso's family put him in art lessons, right? He would not have developed who they are. And we've heard stories of Jobs and Bill Gates and stuff. They dropped out of college because their passion was bigger than the structure of college. I am not saying drop out of college. I'm just using it as an example. So if you read any of those books on the talent code and Outliers, all these books to try and figure out how great performers do great things, they all have different things and different reasons, but mostly all of them agree on two things. That there's two things that create someone who excels at anything. So number one, there's DNA, right? There's a God-given ability, what we're born with, and some and the game is, everybody has this God-given genetic ceiling, and the game is how close do we get to it. So many people fall too far under it. Now, if you want to limit the genetic ceiling of your son, put him in an overly structured program. The second thing all of these books and all of these experts say is that another leading factor is self-directed work, which means them practicing on their own. So there's all kinds of stories of Kobe Bryant, opening up the gym at 5 o'clock, or the janitor, I think it was. And I was told that Manny Ramirez had his teammates line up cars at night and turn on their headlights so he could take batting practice at night. And all of these stories of these self-directed work. So if you want to fuel your son's passion for baseball, go buy him a pitchback. Or draw a strike zone on your garage. I'm not a big fan of pitching machines, but I would much rather have your son doing self-directed work with a little wiffle ball machine, rather than being in some structured baseball program that I think would stunt his development and maybe burn out that passion. I'm going to leave this podcast and put this on the runway with one quote, and it was said to me by a friend. You can't make your kid love the game. If he loves the game, he loves the game. You can't make your kid love the game, but you can make your son hate it. And so the goal of this podcast is that we squeeze the most out of baseball, that we do it right, but we don't overdo it. So that's it for today, guys. Again, head on over to baseballdadshow.com. Please join that Facebook group, and you'll see the other stuff that we have available over there at baseballdadshow.com. But join that Facebook group. It's absolutely awesome, and I think you are going to love it. So thanks, guys, for listening. Love you guys. You're awesome, and all the great comments and stuff we've gotten on the podcast really been encouraging. So thank you. And I will see you guys next week.